Hey everybody, this is Gary Key. Welcome to episode 2 of Recon Podcast. I've said it before, and I'll say it again. Lucas Oil Safeguard Ethanol Treatment is the right thing for your outboard. I was going through fuel pumps maybe once a year, maybe once every year in a few months, all because of ethanol gunk clogging them up, causing them to go bad. Since I've started using Lucas Oil Safeguard Ethanol Treatment, I've not had to replace a fuel pump. That's a fact. I'm going on 4 years now. That's 4 years and counting. Guys, gals, I want to spend my time on the water. I don't need my boat in the shop taken away from my fishing time. Take care of your outboard motors, use Lucas Oil Safeguard Ethanol Treatment, and make sure that you aren't having to replace fuel pumps like I was.
In a world where predators lurk below the water's surface, humanity has been left searching for answers on how to catch these creatures. Now, two men set out to solve the mysteries of fishing and to share that information with you. So get ready as Gary Key and Jimmy Savoini bring you Fish Recon Podcast.
Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Fish Recon Podcast. I'm Gary Key.
And I'm Jimmy Savoini.
Jimmy, we got a packed show tonight, as we always will. We'll always have a packed show, but tonight we got a particularly packed show. And before we kick off, let's catch up on the various goings-on of Jimmy Savoini and Gary Key.
So last week I was at the California Delta for the last Pro-Am bass fishing tournament for the Wild West Bass Trail. I was out at the Delta, and as you know, and probably a lot of our listeners know, it's the Delta waters that eventually go into San Francisco Bay, Sacramento, and the San Joaquin rivers, and all of the levee system that is in between, the way they constructed it to service the farmland. Anyway, there for a big bass tournament, caught some really good fish, had a great time.
I got some pictures. You sent me some pictures of some monster bass.
I got some good ones, and you've been out there a few times too, and it's just one of our favorite places to fish for bass. It's you got tides and you got all kinds of cool stuff, lots of heavy cover, and I caught a ton of fish. I ended up mid-pack, 30th or 40th. Of course, that kind of lends to what we're going to do tonight. I'm not exactly sure where I finished because I didn't finish that high, so I finished somewhere in there. But anyway, it was a great trip. I love the Delta and love to fish there anytime I can. Caught tons of fish, a lot of topwater fish, and as you know, it's just a fun place to catch bass. So
for anyone that wants to take a look at the pictures of some of the big giant beauties that you caught, we've got them up on our Instagram page. Yeah, I was pretty impressed with those. And the Delta is one of my favorite places to fish, and I've been out there a handful of times, like you said. It's been several years, but I really, really miss it. While you were out at the Delta, we broke a record. And we're going to talk about that later this show. But we broke a record, and we're going to talk about that record.
I can't wait to hear about it.
Oh, my gosh.
That'll be awesome.
Oh, my gosh. You know what? It was a record that has been long
needed to be
standing.
Broken.
It needed to be broken. And it's been a goal for a long time to break that record, and it finally got broken.
Very cool. I can't wait to hear about it.
Well, we're going to talk about it. And, to kick off and to continue on from our last episode where we talked about the psyche of the fisherman, one of the things that you and I brought up and we talked about was that for whatever reason, the word liar and fisherman, they're synonyms. They're synonyms.
And why is that? And it's one of those things where even people that aren't really associated with fishing, how many times have you heard it before? You lie like a fisherman. I mean, they're right up there with used car salesmen and Congress people and, lawyers, I guess we could say. And why is it the fishermen? I mean, why have they garnered that reputation over the course of time? And obviously that's something we want to talk about and dig into. Pretty varied, I think, as far as the reasons why people in general tell lies. Some people are just born liars, right? I mean, they couldn't lie about the most they'll tell a lie about the most basic things, and then then there's the stretch of the truth, or there's the the way that stories morph over time, and interesting that it always comes back to fishing, and with fishing it's just associated with that almost intrinsically,
Yeah, and it seems that fishermen, and I'm going to throw myself into this hat, we embellish not only in words, but even when we have our picture taken, because I am guilty, and I'm proud of it. I am guilty of holding that fish out with a straight arm, so that picture looks like I've got a giant when maybe it's
You
not
mean
quite
like
a
the
giant.
trick of hiding your entire arm behind the fish so you can't see how far you're sticking it out? I don't know anything about that, Gary.
Yes.
I've never done that before. So
Well, and I'm teaching my kids well, because I'm teaching them to hold the fish out. It's like, no, don't hold it close to your chest. Hold it out, straight arm. You want to make that fish look big. Take up the picture.
absolutely. Well, but I have to say, I mean, and so here we go. This is where we talk about the gray area. It also makes the picture look better. It really
That's right.
because it obviously it makes a fish look bigger. You can't really tell how big it is, but it really displays the fish in a way that people can really see it too. So, we're not trying to make the fish look bigger as much as we're just trying to take a quality photo. So, give it its due. But real quick, I wanted to read just a passage to kind of set us up for what we're going to talk about here. And this is written by Tony Bishop. The website I got it off of is Bish and Fish from New Zealand. And so real quick, it's just kind of the idea behind it. So it says, the picture of a fisherman, his arms spread wide, extolling the size of the one that got away, has become an overworked cliche. But under the cliche, beyond the lies, there lurks a possibility. There we are, rod in hand, waiting for the big one. At the back of mind is the hope, the picture, the dream of the big one. The fish so big, the negative of the photo will weigh 10 kilos. The fish that will earn us the adulation, respect, and envy of every other fisherman. Suddenly, the line pulls tight. Our quarry races off. The fight is short or long, depending on the storyteller's ability, but ultimately it ends in disaster. A disaster indeed. This fish was the stuff of dreams. No fish pulled harder. No fish pulled line off the reel so fast. No fish put that much of a bend in the rod. Another dream shattered. A vision hidden by the tyranny of invisibility under the water. So I thought that kind of just at least captured the essence of how these things start, I mean, how it always starts with a few different things. I mean, there's a number of different things that leads us to stretch stories or to fabricate in fishing. And probably that's the number one, is the size of the fish that we lost that we never did see,
Well, I'm guilty as charged, right? And I think we all are. I don't know that I've met a fisherman who doesn't have some fish story. And for you and I, it actually goes in a little bit deeper because we do competitive, we tournament fish, right? So we're in competitions. And a lot of times, the one that got away, there was money on the line. I mean, I can count on both my hands the number of times that I've lost fish in big tournaments that cost me a lot of money. I lost a big fish in an FLW tournament on Lake Mead that would have won me a boat.
Absolutely.
And those are painful. I mean, those are painful, the ones that get away. And they are legitimate fish that get away. We just happen to make them sound like they're bigger than they were, right?
Well, I mean, and you put some money on the line or some sort of competition into the mix, and then it really means, I guess it's to everybody's meaning, that to everybody that fishes for different reasons. And I mean, even your recreational angler that loses, that might only get out once or twice a year and goes to the lake or the stream or whatever it is, catches a half a dozen fish but gets broke off or loses a couple of them. I mean, that's a successful fishing trip in and of itself, but the only thing that the angler takes away from that experience was the fish that got away. That's what sticks in our mind. And it's interesting because we've all lost fish, and you and I have been tournament fishing long enough that we've lost fish that have cost us significantly. And I still remember every one of them. I mean, and ones that you don't see are especially heartbreaking. I mean, they were always bigger, they were the ones that are going to win the tournament. And, you can even have a successful tournament or successful competition or successful trip and come away with it with that sense of loss because you lost a bit. The one you didn't see was the one you really wanted. I mean, it's that unattainable goal, and you can't get it back. You can't change it. And so all you're left with is that experience, and it weighs on you. And I did a little research and did some reading on, I just Googled fishermen and lies and kind of put them together. And one of the common elements that I found with all of these kind of things, so what makes us exaggerate these stories and what makes us blow them up. And there was a common thread through it of the excitement of the moment and the adrenaline that we generate when we hook up with a fish is so high that it's this peak thing. And adrenaline and the excitement of the moment seem to be a common thing that allows us to keep replaying it over and over. And then, of course, we replay it to ourselves, and then we start to replay it to our friends and our family, and here we go.
And it continues to grow.
Right,
It just keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger. You know, it's funny because, like you mentioned remembering every big fish that you lost. I'm exactly the same way. And it's not just tournament fish. I mean, I've shared with you some of the fish that I've lost in tournaments, FLW tournaments and Bassmaster tournaments. I lost a giant double-digit bass in a Bassmaster tournament on Sam Rayburn. I wouldn't have won the tournament, but I would have got second place in big fish, and it would have been a fish worth about $22,000. But I also remember as a young kid, a young teenager, going out in the ocean, my first time ever off San Diego, going down to the Outer Banks, which are basically in Mexico waters,
right,
and hooking into a big tuna. And this tuna was owning me. I mean, it was literally owning me. I just couldn't turn the fish around. It was spinning drag off my reel. And I made a rookie mistake. I reached down, and the little star drag on those big ocean reels, I thought I need to slow the fish down. I didn't have the patience to, I've got plenty of line on there, but in my mind,
right,
I need to slow this fish down. And I turned that drag star over a couple times, and the fish snapped my line.
Oh, yeah, you crank, yeah,
and
well.
I always remember that fish. I will never in all of my life forget losing that big fish, because there was that mystery of it, because I don't know how big it was. Now, the big bass that I lost on Sam Rayburn that cost me $22,000, I got to see that fish. And I guesstimated it was 11 or 12 pounds. It was a solid double-digit
Well, and at that point,
bass.
you have enough experience to know how big a fish. I mean, yeah, absolutely.
Well, and that tuna that got away from me, if it was a tuna, it could have been anything,
right?
I don't know, because I never saw it. I never saw it. I'm telling everybody that had to have been over 50 pounds. It had to be, right? I mean, I'm 18 years old.
That was a 50-pound tuna. Don't tell you any different.
50 plus.
Right, absolutely. And so that the size of the fish and people's propensities to do that, I think it's just built into us. And again, I think it's born out of its excitement, adrenaline. And the other fact of the matter is too, big fish just don't come along every day. We fish and fish and fish, and we catch, I don't know, just using bass as a marker, a 10-pound, a true double-digit bass. You're not going to get a whole lot of chances at those in your lifetime. So when you do, and you don't convert on them, and you fish as much as you do, it hurts extra bad. I mean, it doesn't matter if it's for competition or not. It just, we don't get that many opportunities to catch them. So when we do, and we don't convert on them, it hurts that much worse. I mean, you feel it. It's like you probably rather get injured than lose a big fish like that, and then another, I actually, when I was looking into this, I broke it down into kind of 4 categories, and 2 of the categories are results driven. So we've talked about, the size of the fish. That's one of the things. A fish that you never saw that broke you off. The other one, numbers. How many times have you come back from a trip, or you go somewhere, or somebody else did? How many did you catch? Oh man, I caught 50 fish. I caught 60 fish.
Right.
Oh, really? That many? Do you know what it takes to catch 60 fish? And I caught 60 fish, I'm telling you. And that just happened to me at the Delta. The first day of the Delta in this tournament, I was throwing a topwater bait, and I was getting bit almost every other cast. It was pretty predictable. And somebody asked me and I didn't keep track of how many I caught. I said, you know what? I caught 40 fish on that topwater bait today. Before I even thought about it, I said it. All right, well. And I may have, but I don't know that I did. But it sure felt like it to me. So that's what I said. And so that's the numbers game, too. I think that's another thing that people have a tendency to over-exaggerate sometimes, Well,
I'll tell you, there's one that didn't get away. And this is part of the story of the record that got broken. And I'll tee it up like this. It's the one that did not get away, but you know what? It eventually did get away.
Okay.
And, oh, yeah. So we're going to touch on that in here just a little bit. Back to the tournament scene, it's, obviously it's not just limited, the lying aspect or the embellishing aspect of the fishermen, not just related to tournament fishermen. It seems to be across the board, but there's something innate in the fishermen, or maybe it's just human nature, where we want to be recognized and we want people to think more highly of
especially
us.
among our peers. It's important, yeah, or I guess it is. I mean, we make it important. I don't know that it's really important if you at the end of the day, but you're right. I mean, we want to be respected, especially in a technical sport, something that we strive to get better at throughout our lifetimes, really. I mean, that 13-year-old kid that didn't know squat about catching fish back in the day has turned into a guy that's fairly versatile with fishing, and continues my fishing education continues to this day. And I think that's a lifelong journey that you and I've talked about a lot. And so we want our peers to recognize our abilities. I mean, it's acceptance among peers is a social fact among us human beings. You know, we want that adulation. We want that recognition. So I think that drives a lot of what we do. And where you're going with this, I think even deeper, you know.
Yeah, I mean, I'm thinking back, I don't remember how old I was. I'm guessing I was probably 11 or 12, and there was a fairly major flood on the lower Colorado River, and as a result, there was a lot of water in areas where there normally wasn't water. And my grandfather and I were down there fishing, and we met a guy along the canal that was below the dam, and he had caught a giant striper. And I'm 11 or 12 years old, and we just didn't see many big stripers on the lower Colorado River down there. This one was particularly large, and he gave it to us. He's like, I don't eat fish, and my grandfather and I gladly took this fish. And I remember asking my grandfather to allow me to tell other people that I caught it. That I caught it. 11 or 12 years.
Oh, yeah.
But why is that? Why do we do that? What was so intrinsic about that fish that made me want to tell everybody else that I caught it? And I'm sure I did tell everybody that I caught it. Obviously, eventually, that no longer became important, or I forgot about it or whatever. But I remember this day seeing that fish in a picture, holding it up, and I remember telling my dad and my stepmom and everybody I had caught this big striper. And it's because of that need to be recognized.
I think so. But I think also you touch on, that's part of it. Like we have identified. I mean, we want the recognition. We also, I think, have a tendency, just as human beings. I mean, it's a social thing, and it's a psychological thing too. I mean, we have, and I mean, we could talk about all the different ways that it's about our decision making and our ethics and our morals and our fiber of character and everything else. I mean, you start down that road, and you talk about the person that would lie about a fish that they caught. Now, as a child, we haven't really tuned in. We know right and wrong for sure. We're taught that. We learn the right and the wrong and the ways that we're supposed to act. But the real fully understanding of an 11-year-old of telling somebody that you did something that you didn't may not be as fully understood as an adult. And then you could go all the way down the road as to people that have cheated in fishing contests, that have shoved weights down fish to win money to do, and on those kind of situations, I think you go deeper into that they don't want just the adulation. So where I would go with that is say, okay, clearly they're trying to gain something that they didn't earn, and they're cheating, and there are actual laws, contest fraud laws, basically in every state that govern the cheating in a fishing contest. But my question on a person like that would be this. So that person that just got caught cheating at the U.S. Open at Lake Mead a few years ago, guy got caught shoving a bunch of weights down fish. And, right. You remember when that happened. Here's my question on a person like that. Would that person, if in the corporate world, would that person embezzle money? Would that be the person that stole a car? Would that be, so then you cross into the realm of criminal and the criminal mind.
Right. And it can't be about the money. I'm convinced that it has to do with the recognition of wanting to be at the top and wanting to be a winner. I want to be a winner, so I'm going to cheat in order to be a winner. But here's the thing that always gets me, and you bring up that Lake Mead tournament. The guy shoved a couple 1-ounce weights down a fish. If you're good enough, if you are a good enough fisherman to be ounces away from winning, why would you need to cheat to begin with? What's the point
and I think that's where I was going with that. Would that particular individual, so the old adage, it's not what you do while everybody's looking, it's what you do while nobody's looking. So would that individual confronted in another situation, completely dismissed from fishing, would would he take something, what is that, the criminal aspect, or is it the the innocently enough wanting to be accepted aspect? And I think there's a little of both involved. I think you go down the psyche of a criminal in some cases, and I mean everything's. But I agree with you. I mean, getting back to what we're talking about with stretching the truth as fishermen, size and quantities and everything else. I think a lot of that has to do with acceptance in a social class and among our peers. I really think that drives a lot of it, and we build it up as fishermen. I mean, what do we as fishermen, when we get together and we eat dinner together, or we socialize together? That's all we talk. We talk about the sport we love. I mean, we live it, we breathe it. It's everything we do. Here we are making a podcast about things we love to do and launching Fish Recon, basically to be in recognition of something we love to do. So if you put that much passion and drive into something, then it's natural. You have a natural tendency to lead towards getting the exaggeration to affect the outcome, to maximize the respect among your peers, if that makes sense.
It does, and there's an acceptable level of embellishment that goes on amongst fishermen in the general class. And what we're talking about is that acceptable level, where I pick up the phone or you call me and, I say, hey, Jimmy, how did you do in the tournament? And, you weigh 14 and a half pounds. You're going to tell me, I had about 15 pounds. We round up. And,
how come we don't round down?
And you catch right. Or you catch a 4 3/4 pounder. It was a 5 pounder. And there's that acceptance among fishermen that's okay.
So let's talk about that for a minute, because that's an interesting point, because if you're a lawyer and you make your living trying cases, there is no acceptable level of lying. I mean, if you're a witness,
right.
That's if you're a doctor and you've taken the Hippocratic Oath and you're going to you don't lie to your patients. I mean, there's no acceptable level of lying. So why?
And that's a good point. Because in a court
right.
of law, and
that's
if a person's
perjury.
on the stand and they say, hey, I was standing 5 or 6 feet away, the first question the lawyer is going to ask, well, which was it, 5 or 6 feet away?
And there's no embellishment, because it affects the outcomes again. And you are legally bound to tell the truth to the best of your abilities. So it's very interesting that you say that, because we as fishermen in our communities that we live in, we will accept, that was about a 10-pounder. And people are, oh, yeah, okay, that looks like it was about a 10. Probably wasn't. Even the first thing you probably think about in your mind is, that thing was 9 and it wasn't 10. But we don't call people out on it. We just accept it. We move on, and it's part of, it's accepted.
Unless you're on Facebook. If you're on Facebook, everybody gets called out on everything,
oh, well,
right?
Social media has changed. It's interesting you say that, because as I was doing some research on this, looking into it, the abilities to spin yarns as fishermen, before we had cameras and phones that could take everything in real time. We could film everything we did. We could post everything on social media and then argue about it and call people out on it. Those lies, so to speak, were much easier to tell, because they weren't so easy to dismiss or dispel, because there was no evidence. There was just no evidence.
Except for the picture that Grandma had in her photo album. That was the only picture you had of the fish, was the one that Grandma had in her photo album.
And it was a horrible picture, and it was 25 yards away, and it was laying there stiff as a board and dead for 5 hours. And it just didn't.
Well, and on Facebook now, you have these massive heated debates. I'll see somebody post a picture on Facebook, and they'll say, hey, I caught this 8-pound bass at Saguaro Lake. And then there ensues
9 threads,
a plethora, 9 threads of people questioning it. That's not a 9-pounder. I've caught 9-pounders before. That's 6 pounds at best. And then somebody else will chime in, well, I can tell by the head and where he's holding it on his chest and measuring down. That's 7. That's no more than, that's not a 9-pounder. And so then there's this massive Facebook agenda of hours and hours of dialogue and debate just because somebody posted a picture of a
and eventually, and you know how social media goes, it's not even about the fish anymore. Then it turns into a war between these people, and then they post the private the private post, they go public, and now you got all over the dispute over how big a fish was. And again, so we talked about a little bit about the acceptance of certain amounts of stretching the truth. I think that's tightened up because of social media, like you say. And then there was two other categories that I looked at too, that I kind of narrowed it down. So the first two were the results, how many, the numbers and the size of the fish we caught. And the second two were the act of fishing and how we spin yarns from that. And one was line breaks on fish that we never got to see. So that kind of rolled into the size of the fish as well. But when your line broke, and the excuses of why your line broke, and it's always because the fish was so big that it just broke the line. It was never anything you did, right?
And it might not even be a fish.
Well, and that's another interesting thing too. It could have been the bottom. It could have been how many different things it could have been that you didn't catch. And then the other one was, and this is an interesting one too, is lying about fishing spots and how fishermen lie to one another about where they fish. And,
I'm guilty.
Well, we all are. And so, again, you go into our competitive world and there's legitimate reasons. And you and I have talked about this a bunch of times. There's obviously legitimate reasons that we don't want to disclose areas that we're fishing, and we go to great lengths to protect those, especially if they're really good areas. We'll do a lot of things to keep from being seen fishing in those spots, especially before a tournament. So lying, and I found this was a funny one. The Dos Equis guys, the most interesting man in the world in those commercials that went crazy. And I found a meme with him on there, and he's got a bottle of Dos Equis there, and he says, I don't always tell people where I fish, but when I do, it's a lie. And it just cracked me up. And so I think people lie about the areas they fish in a lot, and then for various reasons. They don't want people getting in on their spots, and lots of different reasons why people would do that, I'm sure.
And that just recently happened on Deadliest Catch, right? There was a scenario where, and they do it all the time, but
yeah. So and that's where it goes all the way into the commercial world. And I was on Deadliest Catch. The captain of the Time Bandit, Jonathan Hillstrand, was fishing up near the Russian border, and the captain of the Wizard had called him and said they had both talked about going up there, and this Keith Coburn, he didn't want to go up there.
And I'm not a big fan of him either. I'm not a big Keith Coburn fan.
He's angry, and he's cutthroat, right? He's not afraid to cut somebody. He'll do the same thing. He's not afraid to lie to somebody right now if he thinks it's going to keep him from catching the crab that he's on. And there's a lot of ego in that, and there's also a lot of money on the line. But those guys ended up, Jonathan, he ended up going up there to near the Russian border, and Keith did not go initially. Well, Keith, where he was fishing, he wasn't catching them. And then Jonathan, he got on 600 counts in his crab pots. And so Keith calls him up and asked him, hey, are you catching them up there? What's going on up at the Russian border? And Jonathan flat out lied and told him that he wasn't catching anything. I'm not coming up there for that. And he was loading the boat at the same time. And, so again, there's numbers of reasons. But really, would that really have cost Hillstrand? Because he was already in the process of filling his boat. So, getting Keith up there, one other boat, landing on the mother load of crab, and when they had made an agreement to help each other, why did he do that? That goes back into some of the, I'm convinced it's not monetarily related as much as it is to egotistically, or maybe settling an old score. It could have been a lot of different things, but I just found it interesting that he found his way to lie about it immediately. So,
especially if it's a body of water that I fish regularly, if I'm fishing competitively or even for fun, I'm not inclined to want to tell someone exactly where I'm fishing. And don't get me wrong, I'm happy to help people out, especially families or kids or whatever. I'm more than happy to help people out because I want people to be able to catch fish. But when you are in the tournament world, you're not inclined to be honest with people. You're inclined to actually lead them an opposite direction. If I'm on the lower Colorado River and I'm fishing a tournament down there and I do well and somebody says, well, did you go upriver or did you go downriver? I'm pretty much always going to say the opposite. I don't know why, because even if I said the right direction, it's not like they would ever find where I'm fishing. But for whatever reason, I just instinctively Our
initial reaction to do it is to say something different. And I will tell you that I have tried to get better. I just try not to lie, as much. And so, and you and I have talked about this before too. Why won't you just say, hey, listen, I'd rather not say. I mean, I think fishermen are more offended by "I'd rather not say" than a than a bald-faced lie. So, I mean,
Right.
I mean,
And there seems to be an attitude of well, you owe me that much information, and the truth is we don't. And I think your answer is the right answer. That would be the better answer to give. Say, hey, look, I fish down here competitively. Obviously, I fish against you. I'm not comfortable giving you that information, but and I know that wouldn't go over well in the fishing world, because we pretend to be actively eager to help one another out, but the truth is
not.
we lead people astray.
Right.
We lead people down a different path.
And I think you touch on an important part of, like, as we're diving into the why of that people exaggerate. I know we come back to our competitive roots a lot, but I think it really provides a lot of insight on how things happen, even in just the recreational world. And I honestly believe, and you were touching on this before I cut you off, but that even if we lie to somebody, they actually feel better about us telling them something than saying, look, I'm not going to tell you, because then they've put to rest in their mind, at least, a question that they had. If you leave an open-ended, I'm not going to tell you because we got a tournament coming up, or it's taken me years to develop these areas, and I'm just not going to give them up, and you honestly tell the truth, you have now not provided closure to that fisherman. And so it's better just to give them something that they can put to bed, and then they don't have to dwell on it. You move on, and I think that's where the acceptance you and I talk about comes into what we do. That's almost accepted that you can tell a lie or two, because it provides closure for the neurotic fisherman who just has to know, I think.
Really, the truth is there are multiple ways to win a tournament on a lake. There really are. There's not one way. And we always go right to the winner and say, hey, what were you doing? And, maybe the winner says, hey, I was throwing deep crankbaits out on the main lake. But let's be honest here. Second place maybe was only ounces away and might have been doing something entirely different. So I always go into a tournament whenever I tournament bass fish now, knowing there's more than one way to skin a cat. There's more than one way to win a tournament. There's not a right way or a wrong way. And the guy that got first place and the guy that got second place, there may only be 2 or 3 ounces separating them, and they might have been doing something completely different from one another.
And that's exactly. And so this tournament I just fished last week on the Delta, you got a post-spawn situation going. You got the fish doing lots of different things. You had cold fronts, you had wind, you had clouds, and you have the variables in cover from hard rock bank to tule mats to all kinds of things. And I bet you that if you were to go through and talk to the 100 pros and 100 co's that were at the tournament, I bet you there was 25 different ways minimum that guys caught fish that contributed to success. And again, just falling back on bass fishing, I think you touch on something interesting, and it's a topic that we're going to cover eventually. And, I really truly believe that success in fishing, it's the ultimate marriage of art and science. It's artistic ability applied to hard science. And, that's getting a little bit off the path of why fishermen lie and exaggerate. But, the varied ways that we catch fish also lend ourselves and give ourselves a lot of excuses to make up a lie and send people in a different direction. And especially if we find something to catch fish that's unique, that's something that's outside of the common accepted ways that people are catching fish, we figure something out, we're keeping it to ourselves. And you know what we're going to do about it? If somebody asks us about it, we're going to lie about it. So that's just the way it is, man, and, so the many ways that we catch fish and the unique application. I mean, Gary Key looks at fishing and catching fish similarly to Jimmy Savoini, but through his own eyes and in his own way. And same as me. And that's the beauty of fishing. It's there is no correct way to do it. There isn't. I mean, you get something to bite a hook and catch it in your own way, and you come up with it, which is why I think we continue to see innovations in the world of fishing all the time. That wheel has been reinvented so many times, and when it does get reinvented, it gets lied about a heck of a lot. So,
Yeah. And it's funny because you don't have to teach anyone to embellish in fishing. It starts at an early age. I mentioned, when I was
it's in the
11,
genetic
11 or
code.
12 years old. Yep, 11 or 12 years old, and I wanted to tell everybody that I caught that
And
big
you did.
striper that guy. Yeah, I did, and that guy gave it to us.
I
But
love it.
and I think I've shared with you that I have a little competition going with my kids, not between me and my kids, but my kids amongst one another, and it's all about bass fishing this year, and we're keeping a tally of who catches the most bass, and at the end of the year, whatever child has the most bass is going to win whatever prize we decide on. We're not really counting any other fish, but it's bass fishing. So I'm out with my 12-year-old, and I mentioned and talked about him a little bit on our last show. He's the one that has the true fever,
Sure.
right? I mean, all my kids love fishing, but he's addicted to it. And we're out fishing, and he catches about a 2.5-pound bass, and he swings it into the boat. And for those of listeners out there that aren't bass fishermen, swinging means you don't get the net. You just lift it with a rod, and you hoist it right over the side of the boat and right into the boat. We call that swinging. So he swings it into the boat, and it's hanging there in the air, and he sort of loses control of it, and he swings it back over the water. And of course, the first thing I told him was like, don't swing it out over the water, swing it into the boat and just drop your rod so it's on the bottom of the boat. And it's hanging over the side of the boat in the air, and he's like, well, I want to be able to make sure I can grab it. I'm like, get it in the boat. And it shakes one time, and it flops off the hook and
Gone.
back into the lake. And the first thing out of my 12-year-old's mouth, that counts, right? That counts to my score.
Sure.
I caught that fish. That counts. And he was consumed with it. He's like, Dad, that counts. You saw I caught that fish. That counts. I'm leading right now. And I'm like, okay. So, yeah, I guess technically you caught it. And you did get it in the boat. And then back out of the boat. And then back in the boat.
Caught it.
And then
Why
back
didn't
out of
it
the
count
boat.
3 times? You brought it in 3 different times.
Right. So I allowed him to count it. It's like, you know what? You did catch the fish and you got it in the boat, and it was a rookie mistake that you swung
Well,
your
that's
rod.
part of the learning process, and you don't want to, and that's something that you continue to have fun with your kids. Say, no, I don't think so. You have fun with that. Let me guess too. It not only was it that he didn't get it in the boat technically, but it had to be in his eyes a 4-pounder, right? Did he haul it?
Right.
Because he never touched it and nobody ever saw it, and it got off in the water. That fish grew 1.5 pounds immediately.
Yep. And he is actually leading. So he's in the lead. For the year so far, Benjamin, my 12-year-old, has 20 bass. He's got 20 bass for the year 2017. My oldest son, James, is in second place with 18 bass, and he also holds the record for big bass. He has a 4.91 pounder
and he weighed
caught
it, right,
in a
right.
tournament. He weighed it, so we know what that one weighs. And then my middle son has 10. So my youngest son's in the lead, the addicted one.
Yeah, that's why I don't carry a scale in the boat, Gary, because it just takes all the fun out of it. I mean,
It's better to embellish.
I'd rather lie about it and tell somebody, because if you don't have a scale, then technically you can't weigh the fish. So, that's up to anybody's interpretation. And so I don't carry a scale because of that.
So we're going to take a very quick break, and when we come back, we're going to talk about the record that was broken.
Oh, here we go.
So let's take a quick break. We'll be right back.
Stay tuned, everybody. Gary and Jimmy will be right back.
We got some more to talk about. We're going to talk about the record that was broken, and Jimmy has a salad shooter story, and we'll get to that too. So a little bit on the record that was broken. So I'll tell you right now that as far as I know, the first fish that I ever caught in my lifetime, and that's based on a picture that my grandmother showed me, and I'm thinking I was 3 or 4 years old, was a flathead catfish.
The grizzly flathead, man. They're tough.
The grizzly flathead. And my grandmother told me we caught it on a little nightcrawler worm off the All-American Canal. And there's a picture somewhere in a photo album that I think my uncle has, now that my grandmother's passed, of me holding this little flathead. And I don't think it was very big, maybe 12 inches long.
Right.
So my entire life, there's been a little bit of a lore about the flathead catfish with me. It just sort of has been legendary for me. It's just, I don't know what it is.
Well, they have a bit of mystery about them. I mean, so kind of setting it up. they grow to 60, 70, 80 pounds, and there's people that just really only fish for flatheads, and you know how they are. They're just a big, tough fish and almost live out of water. They're a tough fish, and they're also great eating. So there is a bit of mystique. I mean, people talk about them eating 1-pound bluegills for bait and all kinds of crazy stuff. So, the flathead has a reputation that definitely precedes it.
I have always wanted to explore that lore of the flathead catfish, and I've never been able to. So, I caught the little catfish, and I'm sure we were using night crawlers. We weren't intending on catching flathead catfish. We were intending on catching whatever bit, and I just so happened the first fish I ever caught was a flathead. And I remember my grandmother telling me that she held the family record for flathead catfish. It was 18 pounds. And in the back of my mind, I have always wanted to beat that record.
Beat your grandmother's record, of course.
I wanted to beat my grandmother's record. Absolutely.
Yeah, beat up on grandma.
As a little kid. Beat up on grandma. And we never really fished for flathead, though. So, my dad, fishing with my dad and my grandfather, we would go out with night crawlers and sometimes, cut mackerel and bass lures. And we just more or less fished for anything that bit, whether it be a channel catfish or a bass or a crappie or a bluegill. And if you just so happen to get lucky and catch a flathead, then that was cool, too. So this was not only a record that held in the family, but it was a record that probably wasn't going to get broken until someone learned how to actually target flatheads and go after them. And so my dad had a place on the lower Colorado River way back years ago, an area called Imperial Oasis. It's now called Hidden Shores. And we would go there on the weekends. And I remember there was a fish cleaning station down there and some palm trees. And some of the old guys that lived there would catch these monster flatheads, fillet them, and then they would hang the carcasses up on these palm trees for everybody to see. And I'm an 8-9-year-old kid, and I'm seeing these, and I'm like, these are so huge. These are awesome. One day I'm going to go out and I'm going to catch a big flathead. And I would ask my dad all the time, and he just was never interested in going specifically targeting for flathead.
Sure.
And I don't know that my dad knew how. He just liked to go out and have a good time fishing.
Absolutely.
But flathead was more like, well, you got to go out at
it's
night.
More technical.
And
it is a little more technical, and it does take more effort. I mean, I suppose you could catch the odd flathead just by mistake, and I have on conventional bass lures occasionally caught, not a big one, but I mean they'll eat crankbaits, they'll eat other things, and so, but the guys that really target them, I think there's a bit of a system involved, right? There
is, and so. Fast forward many years. I'm now in my 40s and I have kids, and grandma's record's still holding strong at 18 pounds. Yeah. And now that we have a place on the river, last year I set out that I was going to teach myself how to flathead fish. I'd never really, in my entire life, gotten to just go target flatheads, which, as you said, it's a unique technique. Channel cats and blue cats, you drop down with something stinky, they smell around, eventually they find it. Or, as you noted, you randomly catch one bass fishing. But the truth is, flatheads like live bait.
Yeah, they do.
They're like that live bait. And, over the vast many years that I've spent down on the river and in various parts of the country, there are guys, usually the older men, the respected legends of fishing, they go out and they target flatheads and they come back with these, 40, 50, 60 pounders, like you said. So I set out last year that I was going to learn how to flathead fish. I was going to teach my kids how to flathead fish, and we were going to break Grandma's record. That was our goal. That's the goal. Down. It's Grandma's record, and we got to break it. I got to break it in my lifetime because it's been lingering around for many years.
And she would want that for you, of course.
I'm certain of it. I was actually an only child and an only grandchild on that side of the family. Her record held, I'm guessing she caught it in the 60s because everything I was told, she caught it before I was born. I was born in 1970, so she caught it in the 60s. So here it is, 2017. So last year, we learned how to flathead fish by just talking to some of the locals and the local legends down in the lower Colorado River. And most of those guys are really happy to tell you kind of how they do it. Now, they're not going to tell you their sweet spot, but they're going to tell you more or less how to do it. And I got lots of varying opinions. And, you got to use live bluegill. Yeah, I got that. You got to use live bluegill. But we're out in the river. Do I go deep or I go shallow? Because I've heard I've heard different stories. I've heard some guys say you look for the deep eddies in the river. I've heard some guys say, you know what, the flatheads at night, that's what you want to catch them. They'll leave the deep and they'll go up into the shallows looking for bluegill to eat. So last year we went out and we did some flathead fishing, and the biggest we caught was about 10 pounds.
Okay.
And we were just sort of dipping our toe in the water. We're just learning how to do it.
Well, sure.
And you're out there, and of course, after the sun goes down, the mosquitoes come out. So you've got new challenges to deal with. But with that said, in the summertime, the temperature's a lot nicer out at night. And we would sit out there with our lights and hang out in the boat and flathead fish, and you just wait. And it's a bonding time for the family because you're just talking about this or that. And out at the river, we're nowhere near the city limits, so we're able to watch the stars and saw a lot of shooting
devices,
stars.
no iPads, no distractions of like that. It's quality time.
Just good quality time. Whereas, bass fishing, a lot of times we dig in and we're focused and we're moving the boat and we're casting and we're winding and we're doing all this, and sometimes it's hard to have a real good bonding time. But here, you're just sitting back waiting for something to go on with that rod. So last year 10 pounds was as large as we got. So this year we set out still, and my kids know it. My kids know we are after grandmother's record. That's the goal. That is the goal, is grandma's record.
They've heard it for years.
Oh, they've heard it, and they know that's what we're after. So we went on vacation last week, a couple weeks ago, and the first night I took the girls out, and we went to a deep eddy in the river, and we never got a bite.
For those of you that don't know, Gary's got to take his kids in stages. He's got a bunch of them. Girls one night, guys the next. He's got to separate them, but that way, because he's got a bunch of them. So
that's right. I always say at the grocery store, I don't have to know their names. I just have to be able to count to 7. I have 7 kids.
That's right.
So I don't need to know names. I don't have to say, hey, where's Matthew, or hey, where's Audrey? All I got to do is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay, I'm good.
Yeah, that's right. So just letting everybody know that's how that is. So
it's all about counting.
The girls get one night, the boys are next.
Yep. So we go out with the girls. We didn't get a bite, and the girls are disappointed, and they know. The girls know that the boys are going to catch the big flathead. They already know it. They're like, oh, we didn't get a bite. Oh man, that's going to suck because the boys are going to go out tomorrow and you guys are going to catch them. And I'm like, well, it's just the way it is. We're just learning, getting the rhythm, and we're going to figure this out. We're all going to catch flatheads. And so the second night we go out and we go out, before the sun goes down, we catch a bunch of live bluegill. And at least a couple weeks ago, the bluegill just really weren't where we could load the boat with bluegill. So we ended up only catching about 8 of them. And that's not bad, but I like to go out. If I'm going to go out flathead fishing, I want to have
a couple dozen, 20.
Yeah,
sure.
Get close to 15 or 20, I feel better because they come off the hook and they die. And so we go out to our first spot, and I go with what I know. I go to a spot that we caught a flathead last year, and again, the biggest we had last year was 10 pounds.
Sure,
10 pounds.
Nice fish.
Nice fish, perfect flathead, and actually the better eating. I would rather eat a 10-pounder than a 50-pounder.
Absolutely.
So we pull up on the spot. We're there about 30 minutes, and the line, the drag on the ocean reel starts taking off. Just a little slowly, right? A little bit, just tick, 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 and it starts taking off. We set the hook, and we catch it, and it's another one about 10 or 11 pounds. We're like, oh, man, this is awesome. We're thrilled. We're thrilled about this.
Success.
A success. We got a flathead in the boat. And by the way, for our listeners out there, I've got this video up on our YouTube channel, Fish Recon, one word, so you can check out the video of flathead fishing, but there's more to the story. So we catch the 10-pounder, we get it in the boat, we do some videotaping of it, and then we sit back down, drop the lines back out with the live bluegill, and we're throwing some pretty large bluegill. These are, 8-inch bluegill, and nothing happens for about an hour and a half. And, I'm getting tired, and I'm not one to stay out all night in the boat. I know the kids really want to do it all night.
And that's the thing. So the quality family time can degenerate into tiredness and boredom quickly if you're not at least getting a bite or two here and there. It's hard to stay the course, man, when you're and again, it takes a commitment. You're looking for a 20 to 30 pound fish. They're just not around every corner. So
they're not, and I'm getting sleepy. So I'm like, well, we fished our normal spot that we like to fish. We got a good flathead. This is cool. Let's try one more spot on our way back, and then we'll close out the night. And I'd like to be done about 11 o'clock. So, a lot of guys stay out all night, and they say that's the better way to do it. But I don't want to get eaten up by mosquitoes, and I'm tired, and I want to sleep in my bed and be comfortable. So call me lazy. We're going to break Grandma's record, but we're going to do it the easy way.
I'll call you a part-time flathead fisherman. And hey, you can put me in that category as well. So
Right. I want to break Grandma's record, but I don't want to do it the hard way. So we stopped back at another spot that I saw. I had seen bass fishing, actually. And I'm like, oh, wow, there's a nice river eddy here with a nice deep hole. One of these days I'm going to flathead fish this spot. So we go to the spot, we tie up, and we pitch out the live bluegills, and we're sitting in the boat, and we're just talking about shooting stars and other family bonding time. And I asked my son, like, hey, what time is it? He's like, well, it's 10:50. And I'm like, we'll give it another 10 minutes. I'd like to be out of here by 11 because we still got to get back to the docks and get up to the trailer and, get a good night's rest. And we're like, okay. And I'm laying kind of back in the boat, and I feel like I'm starting to nod off. And that ocean reel, it was like a Penn 500 or whatever,
right,
starts screaming. Now, we've caught, over last year and this year, we've caught probably 8 to 10 flatheads. Again, the biggest being 10 pounds. And usually, it starts
tick,
ticking.
Tick, 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 tick.
Oh, yeah. And it stops. And then tick, 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 and stops. This thing was screaming. And me and the 3 boys, we're jumping up and down the boat, just trying to get our bearings about us to figure out, okay, what's going on and who's responsible for it.
Right.
And so we're flipping out. We're saying fish on, fish on, fish on, fish on. And we don't know what reel it is. We've got 3 reels out, and all we hear is a reel screaming. At this point in time, we don't know which one it is. So I'm trying to get my bearings about, and I'm trying to figure out where the noise is coming from. And we figure it out. It's off the back right of the boat, which is actually our shallow rod. It was about 8 foot deep there.
Right.
And I pick up the rod, and it's just screaming off there. And I click it over, and it's got, 40 or 50 pound line on there. I click it over and set the hook.
Were you using braid?
No, actually, I was using a copolymer.
Okay.
A copolymer, yep. So I flip the reel into gear, and I set the hook, and it starts peel and drag off there like no tomorrow. And I turn on the boys, and I'm like, this is the one we've been waiting for.
Yeah.
Get the other rods in. This is serious time now. So we went from almost falling asleep watching shooting stars to it's game on, and it's time to be serious. And so we're scrambling around. We're getting the rods in the boat. And my older son starts reeling in the other 2 rods. Him and one of my other sons reeling the other 2 rods. I'm fighting this fish. And as I'm fighting this fish, I can tell there's something on the end of this line that I've not experienced before in my lifetime in fresh water. Now, I have in the ocean, but I've not experienced this before in fresh water. And all I can think about is, I don't want this fish to come off. I just want to see what this is. Because
you didn't want to have to tell everybody it was a 75-pounder.
That's right, because it would have been. Had this fish come off, it was
absolutely.
a river record. It was a river record had it come off.
You know it.
And, obviously at the river down there, there's more than just flatheads that lurk beneath the water surface. There's blue cats and channel cats. So it's possible it's a big blue cat or big channel catfish. But in my mind, I'm thinking, I'm 46 years old. My grandmother's record is held since the 60s. Is this the one? Is it the one? And I'm reeling this fish in, and as I'm reeling it in, I feel my arm start to burn. And I shared this with you that I actually tore a tendon in my arm, I think from fighting this fish.
Well, sure. I mean, the perils of flathead fishing, right? It's
perils
combat.
of flathead fishing. I already had tendonitis. Whatever it is, I damaged it, and I'm having a little bit of a struggle here. So we're trying to get the boat situated. I'm fighting this fish. We get it up. We've got one kid's holding a spotlight, a giant spotlight. Another kid's holding an iPhone so we can film this thing, and another one's running around with a net, and I'm fighting the fish. So it's chaos in the boat. It's just
complete chaos.
Complete chaos in the boat with 4 of us. With the spotlight, we see this fish swim by, and all of us are at a loss for words because we know this is it. This is the one. This is the one we fished for all last summer and couldn't get, and here we are starting off the 2017 summer, and it's on the line. And I'm actually worried at this point it might not even fit in the net. So we fight the fish for a while. It's pull and drag. We get it close to the net, and my son nets it. And we have a little bit of a struggle getting it in the net, and we pull it into the boat. And we lay it down on the floor, and it's celebration, like 1999 or whatever the Prince song is. It's party like it's 1989 or 1999, whatever the song is.
Torn ligaments, didn't matter.
Torn ligaments. We are screaming, we are high-fiving, we are just beside ourselves. And as a father, I couldn't be more proud of my boys at this point in time because we did it. We did it. We beat Grandma's record. We did something that I never did in my younger childhood and young adult life. Had never even targeted, but here in our second year of learning how to flathead fish, we went out and we not only beat Grandma's record, we shattered it.
You smoked it.
We smoked it. So, but here's the thing. I don't have a scale on the boat. I can only go by my number of years fishing and seeing this fish, and I'm guessing that this fish is between 25 and 30 pounds. I mean, I've caught 20-pound tuna before. I've caught 20-pound yellowtail before. I've seen 20-pound catfish before. I've seen 20-pound flatheads before. This one's bigger, but I wouldn't guess it to be over 30 pounds. So we decide, well, let's go ahead and take pictures of it. We're going to get our pictures taken with it because we got it right here in the boat. So all of us got pictures. Those are up on Instagram. And we haul it back to the docks. We're done for the evening. It's over. We beat Grandma's record. It's 11:20 at night after fighting this fish and all that.
Yeah.
We decide to head back to the boat docks. And we get there, and I'm like, well, at the gas station, at the gas dock, they have a Arizona Game and Fish certified scale, but the store's closed. So what we'll do is we'll tie it up to the dock with a cord stringer. And this rope is about as big around as your pinky. And I tie the big flathead up and the 10-pounder up, and I just tie them off to the side of my dock over there. And I say, okay, well, tomorrow morning we'll come down here, and once the store opens, we're going to get a certified weight on this.
We're going to find out.
We will find out. So we wake up the next morning. I'm up fairly early, and one of my daughters is up. And obviously we got back to the trailer and we shared the whole story, and the girls are going crazy, and we just knew it. We knew you guys were going to beat us and whatnot. So I get up, my middle daughter gets up with me, and she wants to see this flathead. And so we get in the truck and we drive down to the docks. We could have walked a short distance, but we're lazy early in the morning. We get down to the dock, and I walk out to the end of the dock, and I'm already having an adrenaline rush because I just want to see this fish again. This thing is just so beautiful. Just a big, it's almost prehistoric. It's almost prehistoric. Giant flathead. We get down to the dock, and I start to pull up the rope, and it's just frayed into pieces. And I pull it up, and there is nothing there. Literally,
that's amazing.
That giant catfish and the other one had destroyed the rope and got away back into the lake.
Both of them?
Both of them.
Wow.
They broke the rope and they slipped off into the lake.
So did you look up in the sky and just give a little wink to Grandma? Because she knew you broke the record because she knew exactly how big the fish was. She knew you didn't have a scale, and she wasn't ready to give you the satisfaction, Gary.
I guess not. And part of me was devastated, and part of me was happy because and we're going to have an episode on this. I really want to talk about this because every single body of water, every single lake, every single river has some legend, lore, or story to it that is mystifying. And for me, it was sort of bittersweet. There was a sweet part of, you know what, we caught this fish. It broke Grandma's records. I mean, you can see in the picture it's well over 18 pounds.
Obviously, yep. I've seen it.
We broke the record, and we got our pictures taken with it, and I got to spend this time with my boys, and they got to catch it with me, and we had this greatest celebration in the boat. And yet, the fish getting away overnight as we were sleeping sort of sweetens the deal even more for me. And I don't know why it is. Why is it?
Well, and I'll tell you what, it really ties into our topic tonight of exaggerations. And I love your boys dearly, and I think you're a fine father, and you're raising them in very fine fashion. But you have now given them fodder. So there was 3 of your boys in the boat with you?
3 of the boys in the boat with me.
Okay. Each one of those kids has a different version of that story. And because you were not able to put a scale on that fish, they're going to now this is how these things go, right? So now we're going to retell this story for forever till they grow up, tell it to their kids. And who knows where that story's going to end up, Interesting to see how that'll land.
Well, and I'll tell you, and this is one of the beauties of social media and Facebook and the internet that we didn't have when we were kids.
You've got proof.
We have not only a photograph, but we spent the better part of the morning, maybe 2 hours, me and my oldest son, searching Google by weight. So we'd say, go on Google, pictures of
30-pound flathead, right.
30-pound flathead, and 25-pound flathead, and 20-pound flathead. And we just started matching pictures to our pictures and matching pictures. We must have spent 2 hours going through pictures, and we've concluded that it was somewhere between 25 and 30 pounds to the best of our our knowledge.
Well, from the picture I saw, I mean, again, this is where we go, but it's hard to tell. But the picture I saw, I have no problem buying 25 to 30, maybe 30 plus. I mean, you're holding it with both hands. It appears to be 30 inches long. I mean, 25 to 30. I mean, it's got great weight to it. It's got girth. It's got everything. So wouldn't surprise me a bit.
Yep, and I would imagine next year it'll be a little bit heavier.
Absolutely. Might even just have a rope scar on it when you catch it next year as well.
Yep.
So,
and that's part of that lore, right? Because, and like I said, we're going to have an episode on this. We're really going to deep dive into the lore of fishing different places, and obviously it doesn't have to be fish. We all have heard the legends of the Loch Ness Monster. But the truth is there is some legend no matter what body of water you fish. And that fish is out there. It is out there in the river somewhere with a rope scar. And
well, I mean, that kind of takes me back to the old On Golden Pond movie when Henry Fonda's character is fishing for Walter, right? I mean, it's kind of a main subplot in the movie. And he's chasing this legendary Walter fish with one eye. And yeah, we've all heard that. It'll make a great episode because it's there is legends all over the place, and I mean I'm even interested to dig into it worldwide because every culture has fishing legends and fishing different kinds of lore that follow it, and so that's awesome that you created one as well.
Jeremy Wade, who hosts the show River Monsters, that is more or less the theme of his show. He goes after the lore. He go to some river in a foreign country where legend has it. He's like, well, legend has it that,
Well, and it's really cool how his show has become, and I think it's recently morphed into a forensic show too. He uses fishing and catching fish around certain, like you say, lore or legend, but there's usually something going on. People are getting hurt, getting killed, going missing, and there's different times when these certain individual fish or certain species of fish are responsible for some of this. And so, Jeremy's show, while wrapped in fishing, and it's great, we love it for the fishing element, that alone, but he goes and tries to solve mysteries in these various places over various legends and different things that go on. So it's out there, and I can't wait to look at it and dive into it because it's another great topic for sure.
And speaking of other great topics, I understand that you actually have a flying salad shooter story for us.
We live in the age of drones now, and I'm sure you've probably used drones and been around drones, and of course every sporting event now is using drones. I mean, they're just a really, really useful tool, and they put these high-tech cameras on them, and they're giving us looks like we've never been able to see before on the water at different fishing things and different. I mean, we can put a drone into areas where we can't get vehicles and do all these things. Well, at the tournament last week, I've been working with Wild West on trying to help them with some promotional things, and they called me on Thursday morning, one of the practice mornings, and asked if I could meet them because they wanted to take some aerial shots. They wanted to shoot some drone footage, do some boat drive-bys and some different stuff. So I met these guys, and we set everything up. They set the cameras up, and Josh, who's the production manager, he produces this drone, pretty cool looking drone. I mean, a high-tech 4 propellers, and I don't know much about that stuff, but this thing was really cool looking. And so they told me just to kind of fish in the background for a little bit while they got everything set up. And so they were probably 50 yards over onto the bank, and we were fishing along there waiting for him to get ready. And I see out of the corner of my eye, I see this drone take off. And it's got this high-tech camera on it. It's got all these lights. It kind of looks like a UFO. And it flies across the road, and it flies. I said, what's he doing with that? Why is it going over that way? Well, there was about 100-foot, I don't know what it was, a eucalyptus tree or some sort of a tree that you'll see 100 feet minimum. And this drone flies across the road and flies back over. And I thought, okay, what's he doing with this thing? I don't know where he's going with it. Well, all of a sudden, this drone decides that it's going to go get into this tree. And about 100 feet up, this drone climbs into the middle of this tree, and those propellers just start shooting. This is where it looked like a salad shooter. They used to Well, and so the salad shooter commercials from back in the day, for people that don't remember, you could shove lettuce through this thing and it would shoot salad into a bowl. It would just turn it into instant salad, right? So I see this drone up there and it's making these god-awful noises, just, I mean, singing and spitting, and there are branches and leaves flying out of this tree, and it works its way. Of course, that's not, I mean, as Jeremy said on the bank, we have major malfunction. And this thing starts beating up the leaves and the branches in the tree and comes crashing down onto the rocks on the levee after trying to destroy a 100-foot-tall tree, and crashes in the rocks and just explodes. And so obviously that was not what we were trying to achieve with the drone. It destroyed a $2,000 drone. I felt horrible for everybody. But at the same time, a couple things came to my mind immediately. One, I never want to get my fingers in the propellers of a drone when it's going.
I would think not.
You do not want to do that. You know, and I mean, you would think, you see them, and I mean, they look fairly fragile. I think they are. But that thing was shooting half-inch branches out of it as it was coming down through that tree. And, you know, and the other part of it was one of the funniest things I'd ever seen in my life. I couldn't stop laughing. I had a guy with me that was practicing with me to fish, and he looked at me. His eyes were big around as a cue ball, and he was waiting to see my reaction. And I turned away so they couldn't see me, and I started cracking up. And then he just laughed, and he's still laughing about that to this day. He said, that's the funniest thing that happened on this trip. And, you know, so it was just really hilarious. It's just a story I wanted to share because I swear it's the funniest thing I've ever seen in my life.
Those things are crazy. And
the salad shooter drone. Yeah, they'll go rogue. And so, yeah, Josh said, it went rogue. And I said, yeah, that's what I'd say too. If I put it into a 100-foot tall tree and crashed it into a million pieces, I'd say it did it on its own too. So,
well, I definitely have some interest in getting a drone, and I'd like to take a look at, you know, especially down the river down there where you have lots of backwaters and little channels. It would be interesting to shoot one up and get some live footage of what's going on, and maybe get some additional fishing videos with angles that people aren't used to seeing. So might be in the market for a drone one of these days.
They're really cool. I mean, it's been amazing. I've watched them. We've produced a bunch of different shows with them, and just the angles that it allows, and he can sync it up. They've got them now to where they can sync it up to if they put a tracking device on a boat, so to speak, that thing will what they call slave up to the tracking device, and it'll actually follow the boat around on its own. And so, you know, with the camera equipment that they can put on those things, they can really capture some really cool stuff. And I think it's the future of a lot of the reality show production stuff, and especially sports in real time that we're trying to capture footage of. You're going to see a lot more of it down the road. So it's a precursor to what is coming, and the technology just continues to evolve. It's really amazing with where they're going with that. But it was interesting to watch one decide to do it on its own and basically commit drone suicide was what it did. So
the salad shooter.
Dude, it was hilarious.
A new way of trimming trees, right?
It was just funny, man. It really was.
So, Jimmy, you know, obviously we couldn't do this without our sponsors, and we appreciate them. I know because I've seen you use a product for quite a long time for cleaning, and I wanted to just maybe have you take a moment to talk about this product because you're a big believer in it, and you've been using it for a long time, and I've seen the difference that it makes. So,
you know, I traveled to the Delta 15 hours each way over the roads, and you know, they don't call it the Dirty Delta for nothing. And I wanted to tell you about a product that I discovered that helps me a lot when we travel and we go to, you know, the Delta's full of hydrilla, it's full of weeds, it's full of moss, it's full of what you call gorilla snot, which gets all over everything. And I found this product a while back. It's called Super Clean, and it is a degreaser that I've been using. So when I got home, you know, I got brake dust, I got road grime. My boat looks like it's been through heck and back for sure. And so this product that I discovered has been really cool to help me clean everything when I get back. You know, it takes a couple days to get everything cleaned up, from boat to truck to everything else. And this Super Clean product that I discovered is just basically, it's a biodegradable degreaser. And this company has developed basically 4 products, and you can find it on superclean.com. I won't go into the details on explaining everything what it is, but the basic product is great for outdoor, indoor use. You can use it on appliances, carpet, barbecue grill. It's great. So then they developed one that foams, so you can buy a foaming one that kind of sticks to your heavier jobs, and you can use the foaming one. And then they make an all-wheel cleaner that's really cool. So then that developed into the all-wheel cleaner, which if you really want to make your wheels and tires look showroom clean, that's all you need. And again, details are on superclean.com. And then now they've just came out with an aerosol can, which I really like a lot, because you can use less of it and you can spot shoot it to the places you want to go. But it's just a biodegradable degreaser. It cleans everything. It can be diluted down. You know, use it concentrated for your heaviest jobs, and then you can dilute it down for the various different things you want to do with it. But it's just a really cool product, and it makes it easy for me. I don't need 19 different cleaners. I can use the Super Clean product and just get everything cleaned up. You know what they say, super easy, super fast, so it's super clean. So,
Nice.
Check it out, superclean.com. It's just a really cool way to clean up all your stuff after you've been outdoors, and you'll find a million uses for it. And it's very, very, very good to watch. So
is this something that you're spraying it obviously on your wheels, right? Because you get that nasty brake
Yeah,
residue.
so you get the brake dust and you get just road grime. I mean, you travel 15 hours back and forth, and I mean, you go through, all kinds of every scenario. So the wheel cleaner, I mean, you just spray it on, and you can use like a real soft brush to kind of brush it up a little bit, but you just spray it on. Don't let it dry. You don't want it to dry. But let it sit for about a minute and then just wipe it off. I mean, it's that easy. You just spray it on, you wipe it off.
Now, what else do you use it for besides like brake?
I'll tell you what, it's great on the barbecue. I mean, you really, how you and I try to keep my barbecue as clean as I can, clean off the grates right when they're still hot. But invariably, you cook on your barbecue a bunch, and you get all the grease that builds up on your barbecue. Mm-hmm. The Super Clean original degreaser is great for that. The foaming one works great as well. You spray it on, you let it sit. It's got I don't know it's a proprietary thing that they came up with, this biodegradable degreaser. I don't know what it's a closely guarded secret. They won't let it out. But that foaming action just eats that grease, and it just makes it easy to clean off. You spray it on. Again, you don't want it to dry. You want to get it right out, let it do its thing for about a minute, and then just wipe it off. But it's the best overall industrial cleaner I've ever seen. So
then on the barbecue, for example, so you spray it on there, you get the grease off, and then what do you do right before you put meat on it? Do you rinse it off with water, or do you just burn it off with the grill? What's the process?
You wipe it off. You wipe it off with a cloth, with a towel, clean it off. And then for the grill, I like to turn on the grill and just heat it up just to make sure you burn everything off of there. But it's totally safe. I mean, and you don't. So I just fire up the grill and get it super hot, before I use it again, because that'll take everything off of there. But no, it's just basically you spray it on and you wipe it off. That's how it works.
I like easy, because cleaning the grill isn't always the funnest thing to do, right?
Absolutely. I mean, and shower and tub, it's for everything. It's just a super cleaning agent, and look for the purple bottle. It says Super Clean on it. You can't miss it, and you're one and done with that. That's all you need.
So it's indoors too, then?
Indoors. Bathrooms, appliances, carpet, showers, tubs. It's just an overall, all-around cleaning agent. Like I said, they've morphed it into 4 different products that are a little more specific. I mean, the aerosol can's good for smaller jobs and spot applications. The foamer's good for a little heavier stuff. Good to clean grease off of tools with. After you use your tools, you've been turning wrenches on. Clean your engine with the original one at an industrial strength. Everything. I mean, it's just a great cleaning agent.
I'm going to try it out, because I got a lot of things that I don't like to do cleaning jobs on, and I'm always looking for an easier way out.
It's in all your major hardware stores. You can find it anywhere. There's also a store locator on the website, so you can punch in your your zip code, and it'll tell you all the places around you that you can find. I know O'Reilly Auto Parts carries it. A lot of your hardware store, True Value, all carry it. So it's out there. And it's just the best one I've seen. You know, our equipment gets dirty all the time. We're traveling. We're doing all these things. You know, down on the river, you keep your boat in the water for 3 or 4 days, and you got a lot of cleaning to do. And this one will cut down on the time, and it'll do the job for you the way that you expect it to. So give it a shot.
I'm a big fan of cutting down on time.
Especially when it's cleaning, right?
Especially when it's cleaning.
Yeah, no doubt.
The quicker especially I can get the job done, the better.
Absolutely. Well, this is the product for you then. Check it out. I think you'll really like it.
Back to what we had started talking about a little bit with the angler embellishment. There's that level of acceptance where we just accept that as fishermen, we're going to embellish. And if we're talking to one another, there's going to be a little bit of embellishment involved. Why we allow that acceptance is a mystery. But then there's a few out there that take it across the line. And that's what I want to talk about the next show is, and there's not very many of them out there. Maybe there's more than we think. But there are those who cross a line, across an ethical line, unethical line. Bad grammar there.
That's all right.
Yeah. And what causes them to do that? Because, you know, you and I were talking recently, it's not limited to just fishing. There is a need to be recognized. There is an intrinsic human need to be recognized and thought of highly, and we see it in other things. I always laugh, and if I offend anybody out there, oh, too bad.
Right.
So yeah. I marvel at these guys that ride these mountain bikes, and I see these guys riding mountain bikes, and they'll pull up into the grocery store, Starbucks, you know, where your Safeway stores have a Starbucks actually inside the Safeway store.
94 logos on their shirt.
They've got these team shirts on. They've got 94 logos on there, and they're wearing these ridiculous lock-in pedal shoes where they can't even walk on a tile floor without slipping and falling.
But they're not going to take them off to come in there because they want you to see them.
Yep. And I go into Safeway, and I see these guys, like 5 of them, and they've got these jerseys on, and they've got these stupid shoes on, and they're slipping and sliding all over the floor, and they're struggling to stand. And here they are going up to the counter to get this cup of hot coffee. One guy, he gets his coffee, and he starts to walk around where the sugar is, and he kind of starts slipping, almost like he's standing on ice with those shoes on. Off the coffee cup goes into the air and lands on the floor, and coffee goes everywhere, and this guy's on his butt, laying on the ground. And I'm just thinking, what a bunch of idiots.
Right.
And then I started thinking, we do the same thing in the fishing world. There's a plethora of people out there, and I was one of them, where I'm all dolled up in sponsor shirts and jerseys and everything else, but there's something in the human psyche, there's something in the human nature that we want to be
recognized.
More than we really are.
Well, sure. Well, and to your point, I've got a friend of mine that fishes bass competitively who is really not sponsored as far as hard dollars goes. Not only does he wear his team jersey during competitions and during weigh-ins and during times of tournaments, he travels in it. He literally, when he leaves his house, his tournament jersey is on, and it does not come off until he gets home. I mean, that means stopping to eat, getting fuel. That jersey, you're going to see him in that thing. And, you know, I mean, you would think that the guy makes $500,000 a year from the companies that are on the logoed on the jersey. And it's just not coming off. He's not going to take it off. Don't ask him.
And I'll tell you, I got issue with that now. I didn't before, but now I do. And I don't know why I do now, but I've got a little bit of a bone to pick there. And we're going to talk about it. And I don't know if it's going to be the next episode or the episode after, because I really want to talk about those people who take it across that ethical line, those people who are cheaters in tournaments.
Well, and we touched on it a little bit, you know. Yep. I mean, of just where that threshold is, and I think again, there's several different dynamics that we need to discuss as far as that goes, and how one could maybe develop from stretching of a truth of lying about a fish or exaggerating fish catches and doing that, and how that could morph into sending somebody over that line for the acceptance, or just the downright corrupt individual who would plot it out and cheat. You know, I think it's a fascinating subject, and there's a lot to talk about with it.
And it might be like drugs, Jimmy. There might be a gateway drug out there. It might be a gateway attitude or a gateway that would lead someone to that next level, that need to succeed. But I think in the next episode or the one after, I want to talk about the difference between a promotional angler and a professional angler, because there's a big difference.
Well, absolutely. You know, again, you look at our experiences and just how the competitive fishing world has developed, and it doesn't even necessarily have to be in the true tournament bass fishermen. I mean, this happens with people that don't even fish competitively. So you see, and they want to be known as something they're not. And I think you really kind of have touched on how we can really delve into it is that the promotional angler versus the true professional. And you know, you and I have friends, very good friends, that are truly professional anglers. They derive their income with a rod and a reel or in the act of fishing somehow. And I mean, I'd take that all the way to the commercial level of, you know, some of the guys on Deadliest Catch. Those guys are commercial fishermen. They identify themselves as fishermen now, but you won't see them with a bunch of jerseys and stuff. And I mean, they may promote some things here and there, Bass Pro Shops on their show, whatever, from some of the gear that they use.
But those professionals. Those are professional anglers.
If they don't catch, they don't eat, right? I mean, that's how, and that's the same with some of the guys that we know in the bass fishing world. Those guys are beholden to sponsors who are paying their way down the road, and what they catch and how successful they are determine whether they pay their mortgage or not. So that's a true professional. And, you know, then you get into the promotional side of things where I think a lot of us live. And I say that true understanding with a lot of this stuff starts with honest conversations. And that's what we're going to have. We're going to talk about it.
Yep. And there is a ridiculous component to the promotional versus professional angler that I want to touch on in an upcoming episode, because when we talk about this and we break it down in its simplest form, people are going to be shocked at what the fisherman is willing to do to wear a jersey.
No, I think they will be, and I think it's something that's worth looking at, because a lot of times we don't think about it. And now jerseys are standard fare. I mean, kids are 14 years old. If they're going to a tournament, they got a jersey with their name on the back of it, and you can bet there's some sponsors on it. Well, I'm quite sure that 14-year-olds aren't getting paid hard dollars by those sponsors to sport those logos on that jersey. But it's important to that, you know, we start them young. We start them young now. So, you know, it'll be interesting to see, because it's there's a whole world out there of that. And like you said, you touched on it, what they're willing to do. And it kind of builds on this episode, because that will get a fisherman to lion quicker than anything else of what they do and how they're sponsored.
Right. You don't see people going around wearing hockey jerseys with their name on it, pretending like they're in the NHL, because everybody knows, right. Look, I watch the NHL. You're not in it, dude. You're not a professional hockey player.
Not even close.
But in the biking world, in the fishing world, and I'm sure some that I'm not even thinking of, there is this need to make it look like you're a professional. And the industry is facilitating this because they're calling them professionals. And you and I both know people who we've read in magazine articles that they're friends of ours that are called professionals, but you and I both know them personally, and they have corporate jobs or whatever job they may have. That's their profession. They pay their entry fee and go fish tournaments where there is a pro and a co-angler in the boat, and as a result, they're calling themselves professionals. But in the truest sense of the word, they are not professional anglers.
They're the farthest from it. And like you say, and you can incite anger in somebody real quickly by calling them out, which is why we don't do that much. But I think, again, when you look at these sports that we've identified, fishing being one of them, there's a gray area there, right? I mean, so there are a certain group of us that are truly, truly professional, and they're easily identifiable. Or maybe not so much easily identifiable. Maybe that's what we're touching on. But you can't go out and lie about being a Major League Baseball player, to your point, or a National League hockey player. You just can't. You can't make that up. So, but in the fishing world, you can call yourself whatever you want to call yourself, and as long as you have the right stuff that matches up with that, you can pass yourself off as that. So, a great topic. I think it's something that I think our listeners will find fascinating.
Well, with that, we're going to close this session out. thank you everyone for tuning in to Fish Recon Podcast. You can check us out on Instagram, Fish Recon Podcast. You can also follow us on Facebook, Fish Recon. And check out our YouTube channel. Subscribe, Fish Recon, all one word. We've got some good content already up on the YouTube channel. You can check out the grandmother record-beating flathead. See a videotape of video footage of us catching that beauty. And we will catch up with you next time. Thanks, everyone.
I have a very particular set of skills. Skills I have acquired over a very long career. Skills that make me a nightmare for fish like you. I will look for you. I will find you. And when I do, I will catch you.
Big fish, big fish. All the way in the bottom, all the way in the bottom.
Oh my god!
Look at that fish.
Yes!
Oh my gosh.
Dude.
Oh my gosh. Dude, he's a monster.